All right, we are here with Luca Rosano, creator of some of the best NBA and Toronto Raptors content out there on YouTube. Luca, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today with us. How are you, and how has the offseason been treating you so far?
First and foremost, Matthew, thanks for that introduction. I try my best. But no, the off season, it's been good. I'll be honest, I haven't taken time off my YouTube channel in a couple years, but I was able to do so last week. So I've just been kind of relaxing a little bit after a wild off season, or wild free agency, I should say, and gearing up for what's sure to be another interesting NBA season. But yeah, and right now I'm enjoying some much needed off time.
Yeah, there's been a lot of emotional ups and downs for us Raptors fans this offseason. We're going to get into all that for sure. Before we do, we kind of just want to touch on yourself and your channel actually first. So what has this journey been like? Like, how did you get into covering Toronto and the Raptors and the NBA on YouTube? How has that been so far for you? What is it like to be part of that Raptors online community that us are kind of a part of too, on a little bit of smaller scale, but just kind of take us through what's that been like for you?
Yeah, I've been making content since 2017, and I've always been a Raptors fan. I've been following the team ever since I was a kid. So mixing both of my passions into one, YouTube gave me that opportunity. Coming from a undergrad in broadcast journalism over at Wolf Humber, using that and then talking about something I'm so passionate about, I was able to kind of pave a lane, if you will, on digital media and find a scope and find a niche that a lot of people are into, and that is the local Toronto Raptors. And it was just two things coming together, great timing. And from 2017, I was experimenting with a lot of other sports, but I would say 2019, ironically, when the Raptors went on their championship run, that was the year that I went all in on Raptors coverage and NBA coverage, and that was my biggest year of growth. And now fast forward a couple years later, full seam, still doing the Raptors stuff, still doing the NBA stuff, been able to do that on TikTok and been getting some massive traction lately on that. So yeah, it was a little of a trial and error process early, but then it was coming back to what I'm most passionate about and what I like talking the most about, and that is the Raptors, and everything kind of came full circle.
Yeah, we've experienced a little bit of that too. Like we put out a lot of Raptors videos from our podcast as well, and when we put out positive ones, which is 90% of the time, the feedback is very, we get a lot of love from our fellow Raptors fans, but if we're ever a little bit critical, it's a few dislikes on there, but it's definitely a really fun community to be a part of. And whenever there's a big, something happens in the Raptors world, it's straight to your channel. Always wanted to see your reactions.
I appreciate that. But it's interesting you touch on that, because I've actually seen a lot of that too for my time covering the Raptors. I mean, I guess that's what makes the fan base unique. And right. There's one thing about this fan base that I will say: they are very, very passionate. Probably some of the most passionate fans in the world are Raptors fans, right? Because it's true. You go on Twitter, as soon as somebody comes after the Raptors or somebody on ESPN says an outrageous claim about them, everybody's coming to their defense. And you see that on other digital media platforms like YouTube and like TikTok. So I think it's good, and it just shows the passion that we have as Raptors fans and how passionate people are in Toronto and the country of Canada about their team. It's don't mess with them. And if you are going to make a claim against them, you better come prepared with some good research to back it up.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think we would have it any other way either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So getting into some of those divisive topics that have kind of gone down this offseason, it started with the draft, and both Venushan and I were kind of sold on Jalen Suggs. I think, as a lot of Raptors fans, we're going into the draft, and we made a video saying he's the future of the Raptors, all that stuff. We were very excited. And then of course they went and drafted Scottie Barnes. And at the time we were both mad, but either just to keep ourselves sane because we have to, or for whatever reason, we've talked ourselves into Scottie Barnes and all the potential and the work ethic and stuff like that. So where are you on that topic, the Scottie versus Jalen? Are you all in on Scottie Barnes now as the future of the Raptors?
Yeah, I had the same reaction as you guys watching the draft. I did a live reaction, and I couldn't believe it. I really thought the Raptors were going to go with Jalen Suggs, especially since we knew that Kyle Lowry's long tenure was going to come to an end, which it did. After seeing Scottie Barnes, though, during Summer League, I've fallen in love with this guy. I fall in love with his character, his personality, and his game. I think he's going to bring a lot of good traits and qualities to the Raptors. and I think he's got tremendous upside. I think Raptors fans are going to have to be patient with him because he is, he's good in most areas, but one area that he's not most polished in is that offensive game, is that shooting stroke. So he's going to do a lot of good things defensively. He's long, he's freakish, big hands, very athletic. And if he can get his shooting up to par to where you would like it to be, I think he's going to be a very solid player for the Raptors. And it's going to be interesting because his career and Jalen Suggs' career, they're always going to be synonymous to one another. We're always going to look back at this draft class and say, did the Raptors get it right? And we're gonna monitor that over the next couple of years. And I do think when it's all said and done, Jalen Suggs is going to go on to have a great career with Orlando. I'm a big fan of him, but I also do believe Scottie Barnes is going to be something special in Toronto. I mean, how good can he be? The sky's the limit. You've heard many people talk very highly about him, that he does have all-star potential, even star potential, I've heard from some scouts. So I think, be patient with Scottie Barnes and let the kid go to work. And I do trust with the Raptors developmental system by his side, they're really going to maximize what they can get out of Scottie Barnes as a pro.
Yeah, I think that's key to mention that he is more of a raw prospect than someone like Suggs, and that it will take a couple of years for him to, get into that NBA shape and where he's actually, being a starter and all that stuff. But he's playing behind two of the greatest mentors for him, and OG and Pascal Siakam, people that can really help him on the offensive side of the court and how to do things.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I do like, if the Raptors are going to bring him off the bench to start, and that's exactly what's going to be happening. I know a lot of people are saying, rush him to the starting lineup or let him play point. I know he played that in high school, but that's not his natural fit at the NBA game. He's going to be a small forward / power forward. Slowly bring him along. There's no rush for him to start. And like you said, let him get that mentorship from guys like Siakam and OG and slowly work him into the rotation after, you've seen what he can do from off the bench. So yeah, definitely be slow and steady with him.
Yeah, totally. And even forget about the jump shot for a second. Like, just even if he never develops into a shooter, there aren't too many like 6'9" guys his size with his length and quickness and IQ and passing and work ethic. Like, that alone is enough to be like an all defensive caliber player. Add in the playmaking, he's a Draymond Green type.
Yeah.
Maybe even like Ben Simmons, you can like make those comparisons as well. I don't know how good you think Ben Simmons is, but anyway, and then if he does ever add a shot, even if it's just a corner three, kind of like Pascal did a couple of years ago, then we're talking about a guy who can drop 18 to 20, play some all NBA caliber defense, and maybe not the best player on a championship team, but probably the next best thing.
Yeah, no, that's very true. If he can develop that shot, I mean, it's just going to make him even more scary because without that, he's still going to become a very solid player. And yeah, I do see a lot of Draymond Green in him, a guy who can facilitate the basketball at his size, long, athletic, can rebound. And yeah, I've seen some comparisons already to a Ben Simmons. And I'm not a huge fan of Ben Simmons. So, I'll give Scottie Barnes the benefit of the doubt and say, yeah, he could definitely pass the trajectory of a Ben Simmons if all goes well.
Yeah, and we could conceivably see lineups this year where he plays point guard and lineups where he plays center. So like that alone, that versatility is something very, very rare, even in today's, switchy, all like long athletic NBA.
Yeah, the Raptors just have one team that they got a bunch of guys who are long, athletic, and got some good size to them. So it's going to be very interesting with some of those lineups that Nick Nurse does draw out, because you can do a lot of creative things out there on the court.
Yeah. So obviously, this has been covered on your channel and every kind of sports media location in the entire world. But Kyle Lowry, the greatest Raptor of all time, is obviously not on the team anymore. I guess first of all, what was your reaction, and would you have recommended for matching that salary over 3 years for Kyle Lowry, or do you think it just was time to, amicably part ways?
Yeah, I think it was time to part ways. I said it many times on my channel. There was no reason to bring it back, especially the direction this team is taking. It's a youth movement, and you had Fred VanVleet ready to take the keys to the car from him. Other young guards like a Malachi Flynn. The timing was perfect. It wouldn't have made sense to bring Lowry back unless the Raptors felt that they were there in terms of competing for another championship, which obviously they're not, and they weren't. So I I think it was a good situation because fans were ready for it. They were embracing it. I mean, if he had gone at the deadline, you can make the argument maybe they could have gotten a little bit more. But I think overall, the Raptors got a really good, package for him. They got some, a very interesting piece, an intriguing piece in Achua, who I'm very high on. And for Lowry's sake, it gives him an opportunity to go out and try to win another championship. I mean, he's entering the last stage of his career, and what a better perfect way for him to try to, capitalize on another ring than play alongside a guy who's very close with Jimmy Butler and a Heat team that looks very, very good. And that's a team that I got as one of the top teams in the East. And I think, if that Heat team can stay healthy, Kyle Lowry and the rest of them will have a good chance of maybe coming out of the East. You talk about dark horses, they would definitely be one of those teams to consider. So I think it was a perfect divorce, if you will. Kyle Lowry goes off to Miami with a chance to win, and the Raptors, they embrace that he's gone, and he's going to go down as the GOAT. The statue's going to be built eventually, and this team's ready to enter the new chapter without Kyle Lowry, and they're ready to do it.
Yeah, it's good to see like a kind of a happy exit rather than like some of the exits we had earlier with other legends. And it's good to also like kind of let a veteran move on rather than have him like in his late stages where you're just feeding him the ball, taking away that minutes from the young guys. Obviously, we thought it was going to be Suggs, but we still have a pretty young backcourt in Freddie and Gary Trent Jr., who still need all those minutes, and Malachi Flynn now. So opening those minutes up for those guys too will be huge as well.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And a big point that people are, I don't know, maybe people are acknowledging it or not, but the Raptors actually looked really good last season when Lowry didn't play. So I think this team is ready for that post Kyle Lowry era. Like they were, I think they had only lost like one game in total when he didn't play. So it was only a matter of time that this was going to take place. It was either at the deadline, which it didn't happen, or the offseason, and it happened in the offseason. And luckily the Raptors were able to get something in return. And I'm excited.
Yeah, and that Heat team, which already was one of those teams that you just love all those players when they're your guys, and then when you're playing against them, you just can't stand them. Add Lowry to that, who's probably the quintessential player like that. That's going to be one of the most fun and annoying and scrappy teams, especially come playoff time. That's going to be hopefully like everyone just stays healthy and everyone's good, because that's going to be one of the more interesting teams in the Eastern Conference for sure.
Yeah, I agree. The top of the East is going to be very competitive. I mean, you could make a case for 3 or 4 teams that could get to an NBA Finals.
Yeah, no, for sure. So as Venushan just touched on, Fred VanVleet, who already assumed lead point guard duties for a lot of time last year and in previous years, is now the full-time PG1. I think we all think he can do it. I guess the question would be, do you think he's going to go up another level this year? Can he sustain this all by himself? Can he take the playmaking duties all by himself and the lead guard duties and lead this team to maybe a playoff spot? I don't know about that, but how do you think the season is going to go for him?
Yeah, I do want to see Fred VanVleet take that next stride. I think he's capable of doing it, because I know at times people can say he could be a little selfish, taking jump shots when he should look to facilitate. But he did have games this past season where he was a good facilitator, having games where he did have double digits in assists. And I think he will do well in this spot. And I'm excited at the potential, backcourt of him and Gary Trent, because I do see VanVleet taking more of the facilitating role and also being able to, get off his shot and go on runs himself, which you need your point guard to do. So Fred VanVleet, he's a competitor. He's always looking to get better. He's always working hard. I love his character. I love his demeanor. I don't think he's going to back down from this. I think he's only going to look at this as an opportunity to get better and silence the naysayers. I mean, he's already went on to say, like, remember, guys, we were fourth before the whole COVID thing happened. So, like, don't count us out. So it just speaks volumes to his competitiveness. He's never going to be, down and out. And I think he's going to thrive with this new role of being the team's point guard. And I think it's his natural fit, because, at his size, to have him at the 2 guard, there was no longevity there. Yeah, I worked with him and Lowry for that time, but now a guy at his size, like, he's going to have to learn how to play at the point guard if you want to have a long career and be successful. And I think this is going to be his first season into proving that he can do that.
Yeah, he was coming off the bench, for our championship run. So he always proven like from that 6-man role, he was amazing. Then he comes in with Kawhi leaving, and last season he averaged already 20 points, like 19.6. So he was already there, already a 20-point scorer. So especially with that 50-point game too, he showed that he could score basically at will against most teams. And now he just needs to add that extra layer of playmaking.
Yeah.
We already know he's a good defender, then he could be one of those top guys in the leagues.
Yeah, for sure. It's Fred VanVleet's one of those hidden gems, if you will. I don't think a lot of people talk about him enough. And like you just mentioned, he's already got all those other traits. If he can add that layer of facilitation at a consistent level, he will be highly regarded around the league.
Yeah, and something every point guard needs is a capable big man rotation, which was obviously probably the main Achilles heel of the Raptors last season until it did get a lot better when Khem Birch went in the mix there. But it's looking, at least I think us two think that it's looking a lot more competent coming in this year. I think there's a lot of different looks that they can throw at teams. Birch is probably the de facto starting center. And then we got Precious, who I think all three of us are very high on coming off the bench. Boucher probably starting at the 4 to start the season when Pascal is going to be, rehabbing still. And then we got, Freddie Gillespie still, who knows, OG has played some small ball 5 in the past. There's a lot of different looks we can throw at teams. And I think it will be a lot more competent and versatile than it was last year.
Yeah. And again, I think that's what makes this team special. They got so many different guys who are very versatile and can play so many different positions.
Yeah, and speaking of summer, we talked about summer league a little bit earlier, and I think probably Precious Achiuwa was the one who won the most fans' hearts over this summer league, just with his hustling like a summer league game was Game 7 of the NBA Finals. He is a little unpolished, I think, but there's not too many guys his size who can jump like he does with the wingspan that he does, and it seems like he has a really good motor and work ethic. So a little raw, but under Nick Nurse and under the Raptors whole organization, I don't see why he can't be a guy who can emerge as like a very talented big man who can probably start at some point, maybe not this year, but in the near future as the 5.
Yeah, I was initially not only excited but a little surprised that Miami actually parted ways with him. I get why they did it, because you're in win now mode. You want Kyle Lowry, you're going for a championship, but just because he's like so raw and his upside's very tremendous, yeah, like Precious coming back, I think we're going to see as soon as the season. That was a big get for the Raptors, and I think he is going to be an integral part of this team's identity and core moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. He's 6'8", and he's a small ball center, but he moves so fast, and with that wingspan and strength, he essentially could guard almost every center. And the two guys that everyone are going to bring up, Jokic and Embiid, yeah, they're probably going to cause a small ball guy like him a lot of trouble, but who don't they cause trouble to, right? They cause everyone in the league trouble.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's going to be interesting when the Raptors do play those traditionally big centers, right? We'll see how they fare, but I think that might be their Achilles heel when you got to go up against, like you said, an Embiid or Jokic who could just pulverize you inside.
We saw Jokic kind of take DeAndre Ayton to school. Sorry, what am I saying? Giannis. We saw Giannis take DeAndre Ayton to school in the NBA Finals. And if a guy like DeAndre Ayton, who's 7'1", 270 or something like that, is getting kind of pulverized inside by a big like Giannis, I don't think anyone's going to stop him. So, there's 3 or 4 guys in the league who are going to give this team trouble, the Raptors trouble. But again, like, who's stopping those guys?
Yeah, it's an anomaly. Exactly. You just got to accept it.
Yeah. So a couple more things to touch on. One of them is OG Anunoby. So probably the last quarter of last season was the best he's ever played, easily. He was scoring 20 a night, it seemed, in his sleep with his eyes closed, and the defense is always there. The shooting has been unbelievable recently for him. So do you think he's going to take that next step and be a guy who averages 20 or 21 with that defense, keeping that shooting efficiently and maybe being like the best player on the team this year? Or what kind of season do you see from OG this year?
Yeah, so every year he's gone up, and every year he's made so many great progressions to his game, especially offensively, like you alluded to this past season. I mean, he impressed me when he did go on those personal, scoring runs, and we saw a side to him that we never saw from him. Like, we already know how good he is defensively, and that comes to him naturally. But when like the scoring was coming into his game, you saw how good he can actually become. And I've always been high on OG. I've gone on record many times and said that I'm more high on him than I am on a Siakam. So to answer your question, most definitely, do I think OG has what it takes to be the Raptors' best pure player? But at the same time, I think we're going to see this season that the Raptors are going to have to rely on their core three versus just one guy to win ball games. I don't think this is a team where you look at Siakam, OG, or Freddie, say, okay, this is the team's best player. I think those three combined are going to, take a little bit of the onus themselves and show us how good they can be together. But going back to OG, I do think he's going to continue to show us that he can score the basketball. I think his shooting is going to improve from what it was last season. And I think we are going to see a very polished player, and we could see potentially a guy who maybe can flirt with, maybe all-star status. If all goes well, I would love to see that from him. And I've always been high on OG, since I first saw him, play that defense against LeBron in that playoff series against the Cavs. I fell in love with him. I'm like, this guy plays hard, and he's very good defensively. If he can get that offense going, he's going to be truly special for the Raptors. So I'm hoping for him, VanVleet, and Siakam. Well, I'm hoping for him and VanVleet to take the next step, and I'm hoping for Siakam to return to pre-bubble Siakam, and we can see how good these three guys can be together once fully healthy.
Yeah, that's great. Especially with now that we have two guys who have scored 20 points in Freddie and Siakam. We have OG who's scoring nearly 16, who's going to take another jump, probably get in that 18 to 20 range. And we still have Gary Trent Jr., who averaged 15.3 off the bench. Now he's finally a starter. He's going to shoot a lot more. We all know that.
Yeah.
So now we have like four guys in that 20 range where, it's a actual team that's out there scoring rather than one guy getting the ball, getting the rock, like a Karl-Anthony Towns situation where that one guy is going to carry you to the win.
Yeah, that's a good point about Gary Trent Jr. We haven't even touched on him. I think this is going to be a very good season for him, especially if he has that starting shooting guard position under his reins. We've seen what he can do already, especially in late game situations is what I was really impressed from him, especially, that game winner that he had. And Gary Trent, we know he can score the basketball. It's just going to come down to if he can be consistent, because we know he's hot or he's cold, and shooters shoot. He's streaky like that. But I think we're going to see what Gary Trent can do from an offensive side, because he's definitely going to have plenty of touches, especially in that starting shooting guard position.
Yeah, and I think Raptors, they saw a very streaky side of Gary Trent Jr., but that was also because he was playing like 3 games on, 3 games off, because of injury, because of rest, all that stuff. So I think when he's playing consistently every single game in that exact same role as starting, I think he's going to shoot a lot better than what we saw as Raptors fans.
Yeah, hopefully instead of 27 and then 6 and then 24 and then 9, it's like 17, 18, right? Which I think being in the lineup every day is going to contribute to some consistency, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully being back in Toronto, right?
Right.
And playing in front of an actual home crowd that cheers for their team.
Yeah. And so this is kind of impossible to predict, but looking at the East, I think top 4 is, I don't want to say out of the question, but it's probably not healthy for us to expect that as Raptors fans. But I don't think a top 8 seed, or like at least being in that play-in, is totally out of the question. I think when you look at this team talent-wise, and coaching-wise compared to those other teams in that 5 to 10 range, I think we stack up against anyone. Boston, Washington. I don't know. Looking at it right before the season starts, we're about a month and a half out from the season starting, something like that. Mm-hmm. What are your expectations? Are you going to be disappointed if we get a 9 seed and then are in that play-in spot, or where are you at right now?
Yeah, so actually my last video was on this, and I was just realistic with my approach, and some Raptors fans didn't like it, but sorry, I hate to break it to some fans out there, this team's not going to win a championship or get to conference finals, or I agree, not make it in the top 4. I mean, if that happens, I'll eat my words, but I don't think this is a top 4, top 5 team. I think the Raptors, if they do have a very good season, I look at it this way. Best case scenario, I can see them getting into that 6 to 8 spot. Worst case scenario, they miss the playoffs. My most realistic scenario is they get into that play-in. So whether it's 7, 8, 9, 10, I think they are going to be in the playoff tournament this season and have a chance to get into that playoff spot. Because, like the East got really, really good. And for so many years, we always talked about the West, but the East this season, man, on paper, it looks very, very good. I think, those top 4, top 5 teams are going to be scary good. And then, you're going to have like the Knicks, Bulls, Celtics, and I guess Raptors jostling for that middle of the pack title. And then you're going to have other teams you can't sleep on, like the Wizards. Yeah, they lost Westbrook, but that's still going to be a team you got to watch out for. Bradley Beal's still there. The Hornets, we've seen how far along they've come. They're only going to get better. So, the Pacers, you can't count them out. There's gonna be a lot of interesting basketball being played, but I think most realistically, I can see the Raptors getting into the play-in tournament. Like I said, 7, 8, 9, 10 with a chance to make the actual playoffs.
Yeah, and it's about like where our team and our organization stands, especially with Masai coming out with those comments, last offseason where it was like playing for what, right? Like this is not an organization that's gonna push heavy for a playing spot because they know their veterans already have that championship experience, right? They know Freddie's been there, Siakam's been there. OG wasn't playing, but he was on the bench and got to experience it. Whereas you see teams like, the Hornets, they're going to try to get LaMelo that experience, right? They're going to try to create that buzz around their city and that organization. Whereas like the Raptors know the Toronto's going to sell out every game no matter what. You don't really have to push your guys and push for that playing spot. Maybe it's just better to tank that last 10 games and get, a chance at a number 1 pick or a number 5 pick.
Yeah, that's the interesting part too with this whole plan. By the way, I was initially not a fan of the plan, but I like it now. It's grown on me.
Yeah.
But it does make for some very interesting decisions because, like you just said, like you go for a plan spot where you can be ousted, or you just tank and try to get a top 5 pick, top 3 pick. So that's going to make for another interesting scenario this upcoming season for those teams that are kind of on the bubble. But if the Raptors could, get off to a hot start, they're back at home, full swing, I wouldn't be surprised if this team is a 6th or 5th seed. That, like I said, would be a best case scenario. But realistically speaking, I think they are going to be, jostling in that play-in tournament. And I think that's okay because the East is very good. It's not disrespectful to say it. The East is very good. And I think the Raptors are going to be a part of that equation. I mean, people who are saying the Raptors are going to come last in the East, that's a little nonsense. No. But I think we can all agree on where we think the Raptors are going to land this season.
Yeah, I think we're both with you on that. Okay, so one more thing before we let you go, and I think I know your answer to this already, but Ben Simmons is the thing that everyone is talking about in NBA circles right now, and he's seemed to be linked to 25 teams in the NBA, and the Raptors are one of them. Do you want him? And if so, what would the package look like? What do you think the most realistic package is? What do you think is fair value for him? And as a side question, do you see him playing for the Sixers come the start of the season, or do you think he's going to get moved?
So, would I want him on the Raptors? No. Do I think it would happen or has legs to happen? No, because, I think a report came out today. The Raptors are very interested in him still, but the Sixers weren't wowed with whatever the Raptors offered. And the only way the Sixers are going to be wowed and do a deal with the Raptors, we already saw, is if the Raptors put up with those unrealistic needs that the Sixers have of trading away half the team to get Ben Simmons, who I think is very overrated. Like, we're not departing with a Siakam and OG for Ben. It's not going to happen. Sorry, Sixers. So I'm okay with this, rumor going and the Raptors not having any part with Ben Simmons. I'm surprised we're still talking about this. Like, some of these news outlets who are continuing to report on it, because I don't think there's, a chance at this point that Simmons does land on the Raptors. But to answer your other question, I think Simmons does start the season with the Sixers just because Morey does have very unrealistic trade ideas. But I do think something could happen closer to the deadline. And I think this could be a similar situation to the James Harden one, where Simmons does start. There's so much weirdness and animosity that happens in that locker room that the Sixers just get to a point early on in the season where they have to trade him. So it either happens before the deadline or at the deadline. And I think eventually we'll see the Sixers and Simmons part ways. But if I was a betting man, I would say that he does start the season with the Sixers, because I think it's fair to say the Sixers do want Damian Lillard. I think that's their ideal target, but Portland does not want to give up on that notion yet of having Damian Lillard. But even them, they have another interesting situation. If they kind of get off to a bumpy start, Dame starts to get even more frustrated, could we see Lillard be on the move early in the season? And then could that be a potential trade? So, yeah, a lot of interesting stuff to speculate, but I do think Simmons remains at the start, but I do think ultimately he will be out of Philadelphia sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I think the Ben Simmons, his choice words of like not wanting to play for the Trailblazers and Raptors and wanting to be in like a California team, I think that really tanked his value, soured a lot of fans on him because around like the draft time when this trade was like being proposed as well, I was open to it because I was like, hey, if we get Suggs, keep OG and then have Ben Simmons, like that could be a pretty good like young big three to like move on with the franchise, but after his like words about not wanting to play and stuff, I've been pretty hesitant and kind of just want people that want to be in the city.
Yeah, that's another good point. Exactly. You want character guys who enjoy the city and not want to just leave after their contract's up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Scottie Barnes is already, learning Toronto slang and seems like he's fitting right in here like a dirty shirt. I think he's going to be a fan favorite pretty much right away when the season starts, which is coming up on us. Do we know what day the season starts? The first game of the season is like October 18th or something like that.
Yeah, late October.
Late October. So I know we're all really excited, but that's pretty much all we have for you today, Luca. Thank you again for taking the time to join us. We already talked about your channel a little bit, but do you have anything else you want to plug before we get out of here?
Yeah, just my YouTube channel, TikTok, Instagram, all that good stuff. And no, I appreciate you guys having me. Keep up the good work. You guys are good at what you do, and yeah, keep the passion alive. Keep talking about Raptors basketball. It's good to see more and more people do this. So, good job, guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
All right.